But this is the empty chair, which is the memorial to the Forget Never project that is based here at Wat Tyler. Okay, as it's the Green Centre and Buzzards and Heritages Centre as well. So we're gathered here today because it's Remembrance Weekend, a very special one, and we're very, very pleased that so many of you could come and join us and be with us on this very special occasion, especially Stephen, the Member of Parliament, who's also the President of the Forget Never project and the inspiration to it all starting in the first place. Okay, so thank you, Stephen, for joining us today too. We're going to start off with Logan, who's going to tell us what the Forget Never project chair motto is.
Behind you.
Where is he? Oh, do you want to go and stand next to him? Yeah.
In remembrance of all those who have suffered in conflict and those who are suffering still, may we live our lives today with more compassion and kindness, understanding and forgiveness, reconciliation and unity. Let us now in their honour wage peace.
Now we have a very special poem that has been written. The author is anonymous, so we don't know the name of the author, but it's a very poignant poem that will be read to us by Sam Dobson.
Why wear the poppy? Please wear the poppy, the lady said, and held one forth, but I shook my head. And I stopped and watched as she offered them there. Her face was old and lined with care, but beneath the scars the years had made, there remained a smile that refused to fade. A boy came whistling down the street, bouncing along on carefree feet. His smile was full of joy and fun. Lady, he said, may I have one? When she pinned it on him, he turned to say, why do we wear a poppy today? The lady smiled in her wistful way, and she answered, this is Remembrance Day. And the poppy there is a symbol for the gallant men who died at war. And because they did, you and I are free. That's why we wear a poppy, you see. I had a boy your size, golden hair and big blue eyes. He loved to play and jump and shout. Free as a bird he would race about. As these years went by, he learned and grew. He became a man, as you will too. He was strong, tall and strong, with a boyish smile, but he had been with us such a little while. War broke out and he went away. I can still remember his face that day. He smiled at me and said goodbye. I'll be back soon, Mum, so please don't cry. But the war went on and he had to stay. All I could do was wait and pray. His letters told of the awful fight. I could still see it in my dreams at night, with the tanks and guns and cruel barbed wire, and the mines and bullets and bombs and fire. After at last the war was won, and that's why we wear the poppy, son. The small boy turned as if to go. Then he said, thanks lady, I'm glad to know. That sure did sound like an awful fight, but your son, did he come back all right? A tear ran down each faded cheek. She shook her head but did not speak. I crept away in short of shame, and if you were me, you would have done the same. For our thanksgiving is oft delayed, though our freedom was bought, thousands paid. So when we see a poppy warm, let us reflect on the burdens borne by all those who gave their very all when they answered their country's call, that we at home in peace might live. Then wear a poppy, remember and give.
Thank you, Sam. Sophie.
They shall grow not old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning we will remember them.
Right, we're now going to come to the laying of a few wreaths and crosses, and these are all relevant to people who are standing here today as part of the Forget Never project. But before we do that, I would like to ask Stephen Metcalfe, MP, if he would lay the wreath of the Forget Never project on the chair. Thank you, Stephen. Now, as I say, we've got a number of people here who have relatives in across the water, either in Ypres or on the Somme. We're very privileged today to have Anthony Woods with us, who went on our very first trip abroad, second trip abroad, when he was a pupil at Woodlands. Okay, and he's got a number of two relatives, is it, Anthony? Yeah, who are both buried, both in France? One in Ypres, right. So Anthony is going to lay a wreath on behalf of his relatives, who is now, obviously, as you will see, in His Majesty's forces. Joe Cullen, who is the organiser of Basildon Heritage, one of the organisers of Basildon Heritage, lost a relative in World War I. He was a tunneler digging underneath enemy trenches, and he died near Ypres in 1915. Thank you, Joe. The Sheridan family, me, my sisters Annie and Debbie, also have a relative that died, and actually we didn't even know this relative existed until we started to take part in the Forget Never project, and we discovered him when we did some work with Heritage, who helped to look for people's relatives. So he was unknown to us, but this is David Garwell, who was blown up in his artillery command near Ypres. Dean and Logan had a relative also who died in Ypres on the Somme, and we actually laid a wreath there. For those of you that were with us on the Somme will remember the name
Bradforth.
Mr. Bradforth. Yep. So we've got a cross for him. Logan. And then finally we have a wreath to be laid, or a posy to be laid, on behalf of Basildon Heritage by Ken Porter. Just want to mention the fact that we've got 4 flags being flown behind the chair today. The chair was a symbol of those who died regardless of countries they were fighting for. The chair itself was made by a German forester. It stands in France, and we have a duplicate here, but it was a British project that started the whole thing off. So we have the 3 flags there. So it began life as a First World War commemoration project, but that finished. The centenary finished in 2019. But when we decided to keep it going, it was now to be any particular conflict that we needed to remember, and those who have lost their lives regardless of their country. And of course we have news that presently there is fighting going on in Ukraine, and we are supporting Ukraine, as we all know, which is why you have the friendship flag of the UK and Ukraine standing behind us too. Luke Elms was one of our other students from Woodlands who came with us on one of the trips to Ypres, and he wrote last year a very poignant poem, and he would have loved to have been here today to read out his piece of work, but he's in South Africa. So today we have two people who are going to read Luke's poem: Anthony, who was with him on that trip to Ypres, and also Callum, who is going to read the other part of the letter. Callum is doing the first part, followed by Anthony, who's going to do the second part.
It is no wonder that 108 years on from the start of World War I, many of us gather to remember the horrors of the Great War and all conflict since. Many sobering lessons have been taught subsequently. Sadly, many of those lessons remain unheeded. Both battlefields and people bear the scars of all these destructive episodes in our history. For this reason, it pains us to see that some still believe that race, religion, gender and upbringing are ample reasons to divide us. They have forgotten how religion, land, old disputes and sometimes a pure hunger for power and control have played a hideous catalyst to man's extensive capacity to destroy nature and each other.
It's vital we remember we are all imperfect and are bound to fall into disagreement and occasional dispute. But it is also vital that we do not descend into chaos, tyranny, or allow pride and pain to cloud our humanity. This chair is a meaningful reminder to sacrifice. It is a tribute to all those who failed to return to their family dining table. It was forged by a German craftsman, inspired by a British-led memorial project, and the original displayed in a beautiful French landscape. It is a symbol for all nations to plant the idea that if we are all band together and showed the world that uniting together what we could achieve. Imagine what the world would look like if we could ignore greed, complacency, selfishness and embrace friendship and brotherhood instead. I and the people around me who have dedicated time, money and sheer hard work on our behalf, our twinning associations believe that this is fully possible. We will frequently visit and look back onto this chair and the one on the Somme to remind us never to forget history and reach continually for reconciliation.
So that was quite a powerful message, and was actually written by Luke when he was 16. So not, I think you'll find, very mature statement to have made. Now, we found our logo for the Forget Never project on the side of a German trench in Ypres, and Joshua's going to read out our motto for you.
Let us not look back in anger, but forward with hope.
And just to end proceedings, Ken Porter was very privileged a few years ago to read out the Kohima epitaph at the Menin Gate. So,
When you go home, tell them of us and say, for your tomorrow we gave our today.